The ballroom at the Fairmont Dallas gleamed like a corporate fever dream, all crystal chandeliers and forced networking smiles. I stood near the bar, nursing my second whiskey and watching my wife Lumi work the room like she owned it, which, in a way, she did. "Drew, honey, you look lost." Lumi appeared beside me in her designer dress, the one that cost more than my monthly car payment. Her smile was perfect, practiced, and sharp enough to cut glass. "Just observing," I said, taking another sip. "Amazing how many people can fake enthusiasm for quarterly projections." She laughed, but not with me, at me. "You're so cynical. This is networking, darling, something you might try sometime." I watched her scan the room, cataloging power players and social climbers with the precision of a military strategist. Lumi Varon, she kept her maiden name for professional reasons, was the head of HR at Meridian Tech, and she wielded that position like a medieval queen wielded a crown. "There's Porter," she said, nodding toward the dance floor where Porter Keller was holding court with a group of sales executives. "I should go say hello." Porter, the golden boy of the sales department, with his perfect teeth and perfectly pressed suits, married to some PTA president in Highland Park, but that never stopped him from playing the field at company events. "You do that," I said. Lumi glided away, leaving me with the familiar taste of dismissal in my mouth. I'd been getting that taste a lot lately. As a project manager in the IT department, I was useful but not glamorous, necessary but not noteworthy, the kind of guy who kept the servers running while other people took credit for the results. I pulled out my phone and opened the company directory, scrolling through names and faces. Most of these people barely knew I existed, which was fine by me. It made observation easier. "Drew," Rory Veldon appeared at my elbow, slightly out of breath. "Hiding from the festivities?" Rory was one of the few genuine people in the building, a network administrator with a dry sense of humor and an impressive collection of vintage band t-shirts. Tonight he'd traded his usual Ramones shirt for an actual button-down. "Just taking it all in," I said. "You clean up nice, by the way." "My mother would be proud." He signaled the bartender for a beer. "Seen the drama yet?" "What drama?" Rory grinned. "Jennifer from accounting caught her husband texting his secretary. She's been making the rounds, telling anyone who'll listen. Very entertaining." I glanced around the room, spotting Jennifer near the dessert table, gesticulating wildly while a small crowd nodded sympathetically. Corporate parties were breeding grounds for gossip, and tonight seemed particularly fertile. "Speaking of drama," Rory continued, "your wife's been getting cozy with Porter all evening." I followed his gaze to the dance floor, where Lumi and Porter were engaged in what could generously be called dancing. Her hand rested on his chest. His hand sat just a little too low on her back. "They work together," I said automatically. "Sure they do." Rory's voice carried no judgment, just observation. "You okay with that?" Was I? The honest answer was complicated. Lumi and I had been married for 8 years, together for 10. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being partners and started being roommates. She pursued her career with single-minded determination, and I'd become background noise in her success story. "It's fine," I said. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. The music shifted to something slower, and I watched Lumi lean closer to Porter, whispering something that made him laugh. Around them, other couples swayed and practiced harmony, playing their parts in the corporate theater. "Drew, there you are." Melissa Chang from marketing bounced over, her cheeks flushed from champagne. "We were just talking about the Henderson project. Wasn't that your baby?" "One of them," I said. "It was brilliant. The client loved the interface redesign." She turned to Rory. "Drew's like a magician with user experience." "Hidden talents," Rory agreed. "Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." Melissa chattered on about project timelines and client feedback, but my attention drifted back to the dance floor. Lumi had her phone out now, showing Porter something on the screen. They both laughed, heads close together. "Don't you think, Drew?" I snapped back to the conversation. "Sorry, what?" "The new project management software. You've been testing it, right?" "Right, it's functional." I finished my whiskey. "Excuse me, I need another drink." At the bar, I ordered another whiskey and checked my own phone. 3 text messages from Lumi, all sent within the last hour. "Drew looks miserable. This isn't his scene. Porter is hilarious, much more fun than some people. Maybe I should tell Drew to go home early. This isn't a place for children." The messages weren't sent to me. They were sent to her group chat with her 3 closest friends, Amanda, Rachel, and Sophie. The mean girls of the professional world, all sharp suits and sharper tongues. I knew about the group chat because I'd set up Lumi's phone sync to our shared cloud account 6 months ago when she was having technical difficulties. She'd forgotten about it, but I hadn't. Another whiskey? The bartender was young, probably working his way through college. Make it a double. I scrolled through more messages, months of them, commentary on coworkers, clients, and yes me. I was boring Drew and my project manager husband, and most recently, a burden. The funny thing about being invisible is that people forget you're there. They forget you might be listening or watching or learning things they'd rather keep private. Drew, Amanda Fletcher materialized beside me, all fake blonde highlights and predatory smile. Having fun? Living the dream, I said. She laughed like I'd said something clever. You're so funny. Lumi's lucky to have such a witty husband. Amanda was Lumi's closest friend and biggest enabler. A marketing director at a competing firm, she specialized in passive-aggressive commentary disguised as concern. Where's Lumi, anyway? I asked. Oh, around somewhere. You know how she is at these things, social butterfly. Amanda's smile never wavered. She was just saying how you're not really a party person. Was she? Nothing wrong with that. Some people are just more introverted. The word hung in the air like an insult. In Amanda's world, introverted was code for weak, boring, unsuccessful. The kind of person who got left behind while others climbed the ladder. You're probably right, I said. Maybe I should head home early. That's sweet of you. Lumi could really shine without worrying about whether you're having a good time. There it was. The suggestion wrapped in false concern, the gentle push toward the exit. I'd heard variations of it before, usually from Lumi's friends. The implication that I was holding her back, cramping her style. I'll think about it, I said. Amanda patted my arm like I was a confused child. You're such a good husband, Drew, and so understanding. She drifted away, probably to report back to the group chat about her successful manipulation. I checked my phone again and watched the messages update in real time. Talk to Drew. Think he might leave early. Perfect. Porter's been asking about Lumi all night. She deserves someone who appreciates her ambition. Drew's sweet, but so limited. I finished my whiskey and ordered another. The bartender gave me a concerned look, but poured it anyway. Rough night? He asked. Getting better, I said. And it was. Because for the first time in months, I had perfect clarity. I could see the game being played, the roles being assigned. Lumi was the rising star, Porter was the exciting alternative, and I was the obstacle to be managed and eventually discarded. But here's the thing about being a project manager. You learn to see systems. You understand how pieces fit together, how processes work, how small changes can create cascading effects. And you learn that the best way to break a system is from the inside. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app, switching to video mode. Then I walked toward the dance floor, weaving between couples and corporate climbers, my phone recording everything. Lumi, I called out when I was close enough. There you are. She turned, her face flushing slightly when she saw me. Drew, I was just dancing with Porter. I can see that. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. Don't let me interrupt. Porter stepped back, his politician's smile faltering slightly. Drew, good to see you, man. Great party, right? Fantastic. I kept recording, the phone held casually at my side. You two looked like you were having an intense conversation. Just work stuff, Lumi said quickly. Of course. I raised the phone slightly, making sure to capture both their faces. Lumi was just texting about how much fun she's having. Really detailed messages. Something flickered in Lumi's eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. What do you mean? She asked. Oh, just the group chat. You know, the one with Amanda and Rachel and Sophie, the one where you've been providing commentary all evening. The color drained from her face. Drew, I don't know what... This isn't a place for children, I quoted. Maybe I should tell Drew to go home early. Porter looked confused, but Lumi understood. She knew exactly what I was talking about, and she knew I had access to things she thought were private. We should talk about this at home, she said, her voice tight. Why? We're all friends here. I gestured to the crowd around us, other couples who had started to notice our conversation. Porter, did you know Lumi thinks I'm a burden? She's been sharing that opinion pretty freely. Dude, I think maybe... Porter started. Or how about this one? Drew's sweet but so limited. That was from about 10 minutes ago. Lumi reached for my phone, but I stepped back smoothly. Drew, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? Because I think the embarrassment is just getting started. I raised my voice slightly, just enough to draw more attention. A few nearby couples had stopped dancing and were openly staring now. See? The thing about group chats is that people think they're private, but technology is funny that way. Things have a way of becoming public when you least expect it. Lumi's eyes widened as she realized what I was suggesting. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Share the truth? Let people see what really goes on behind the scenes? Porter finally caught up to the conversation. Look, maybe we should all just go home, I finished. That's what Lumi suggested. She said this isn't a place for children. The music was still playing, but our little corner of the dance floor had gone quiet. People were listening now, sensing drama like sharks sensing chum in the water. Drew, please, Lumi whispered. Don't do this here. Do what? Quote your own words? Share your honest opinions about your husband? I could see Amanda approaching from across the room, her face tight with concern. Rachel and Sophie weren't far behind, the mean girl cavalry coming to the rescue. Here's the thing, Lumi, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. You're right. This isn't a place for children. It's a place for grown-ups who take responsibility for their actions and their words. I held up my phone, making sure everyone could see the screen. And grown-ups don't hide behind group chats when they want to humiliate their spouses. What's going on? Amanda had arrived, her voice sharp with authority. Just sharing some highlights from tonight's group chat, I said. Want to hear your contribution, Amanda? Something about how I'm holding Lumi back from her true potential? Amanda's face went white. Drew, you're clearly upset. I'm not upset. I'm enlightened. I looked around at the growing crowd of onlookers. It's amazing what you learn when people think you're not listening. Lumi made another grab for my phone, and this time I let her get close enough to make contact. She lunged forward, her heel catching on the hem of her dress, and stumbled into me. I stepped aside, not pushing, just moving, and she tumbled toward the edge of the dance floor. She didn't fall, but she staggered, her perfect composure cracking. Her dress twisted, her hair came loose from its careful arrangement, and suddenly she looked less like a corporate queen and more like what she was, a woman who'd been caught in her own web of lies. Lumi, Porter reached out to steady her, but she shook him off. Don't touch me, she snapped, her voice loud enough to carry across half the ballroom. The music stopped. In the sudden silence, every eye in the room was on us. The corporate theater had found its drama, and we were the unwilling stars. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet, I think it's time for the children to go home. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds before the whisper started. In a room full of corporate professionals, 3 seconds of absolute quiet was like a century. Then the murmurs began, spreading outward from our little corner of chaos like ripples in a pond. Lumi straightened her dress and tried to salvage her composure, but the damage was already done. Her perfect facade had cracked, and everyone had seen it. Drew, we need to talk, now. Her voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. I'm all ears, I said. But maybe we should include Porter in this conversation, since he seems so interested in your opinions about marriage. Porter held up his hands in surrender. I think I should probably... Stay, I said firmly. After all, you've been such a good listener all evening. Wouldn't want you to miss the rest of the show. Amanda stepped forward, her marketing instincts kicking in. Everyone, let's give them some space. These things happen at parties. What things? I asked innocently. Wives publicly mocking their husbands. Affairs conducted on the dance floor. Please be specific. Drew. Lumi's composure slipped another notch. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? That's rich, coming from someone who's been providing live commentary on my shortcomings all evening. I pulled out my phone again, and Lumi flinched like I'd drawn a weapon, which in a way I had. Should I read some more? I've got months of material here. Really insightful stuff about your coworkers, your boss, your husband. Put that away, she hissed. Why? Afraid people might learn what you really think of them? The crowd was growing now. Word was spreading through the ballroom that something was happening on the dance floor, and corporate employees were like anyone else. They loved a good scandal. Drew, maybe we should take this somewhere private, Porter suggested, his politician's instincts finally kicking in. Private? Like a group chat? I smiled at him. Tell me, Porter, how much has Lumi shared with you about our marriage? Did she mention that she thinks I'm a burden, or that she's been looking for an upgrade? Porter's face went red. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because according to these messages, you two have been having some very interesting conversations about career advancement and personal fulfillment. Lumi's phone buzzed in her purse. Then again, and again. You might want to check that, I said. Sounds urgent. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking slightly. When she looked at the screen, her face went white. What is it? Amanda asked. Lumi couldn't speak. She just stared at her phone like it had turned into a snake. I knew what she was seeing because I'd sent it myself, using the administrative access I'd set up months ago. Every message from their group chat, every cruel comment, every mocking observation, every piece of gossip was now being forwarded to a very specific mailing list. Drew, she whispered, what did you do? Me? I didn't do anything. Your phone seems to be malfunctioning. Technical difficulties happen. Her phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Around the room, other phones were starting to buzz too. The executives, the managers, the administrative staff, anyone with a company email address was receiving a very comprehensive look at what Lumi Varin really thought of them. Oh no, Amanda breathed, looking at her own phone. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Problem? I asked. Rachel and Sophie had their phones out now too, their faces growing paler by the second. The group chat hadn't just been about me, it had been about everyone. Months of gossip, speculation, and character assassination were now spreading through the company like wildfire. You bastard, Lumi snarled. You absolute... Careful, I warned. You're still making a scene. But the scene was expanding beyond our little group now. Across the ballroom, people were reading their phones and looking around with expressions of shock, anger, and betrayal. The careful social ecosystem of Meridian Tech was collapsing in real time. Drew, you have to stop this, Lumi pleaded. You have to fix it. Fix what? Your phone's malfunction? I'm just a project manager, remember? Not really a technical person. That was a lie, of course. I'd spent the last 6 months learning everything I could about mobile device management, email systems, and digital forensics. Amazing what you can accomplish when your wife thinks you're too boring to pay attention to. This will ruin me, she whispered. Will it? I thought you were just being honest, sharing your authentic opinions with your closest friends. Porter was backing away now, recognizing the scope of the disaster. I should really go find my wife. Oh, she's here tonight, isn't she? I said brightly. Helen Keller, PTA president. Lovely woman. I'm sure she'd love to hear about your evening. Porter froze. What do you mean? I held up my phone again. Well, it seems like there might be some technical difficulties with your phone too. Amazing how these things spread. His face went gray. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Share the truth? Isn't that what we're all about here? Authentic communication? Across the room, I could see Helen Keller near the silent auction tables, her phone in her hand and a confused expression on her face. She was reading something that was clearly disturbing her. Drew, please, Porter said. Helen doesn't need to... Need to what? Know that her husband has been texting other women, planning romantic getaways, discussing the intimate details of his marriage with his affair partner? Porter's phone had been even easier to access than Lumi's. Corporate phones with standard security protocols were child's play for someone with administrative privileges. Helen was walking toward us now, her face set in grim determination. Other wives were converging too, drawn by the spreading scandal like moths to a flame. Porter James Keller. Helen's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd like a blade. We need to talk, right now. Porter turned to face his wife, his politician's smile completely gone. Helen, honey, I can explain. Explain this? She held up her phone, showing him the screen. Explain these messages, these plans, these lies? The crowd was openly staring now, the pretense of polite disinterest abandoned. This was better than any corporate presentation. This was real drama, real consequences, real people facing real humiliation. It's not what it looks like, Porter stammered. Really? Because it looks like my husband has been planning to leave me for his coworker. It looks like you've been discussing our private life with another woman. It looks like you've been lying to me for months. Helen's voice was getting louder, carrying across the ballroom. Other conversations were stopping as people turned to watch the confrontation. Helen, please, not here? Not here? Where then, Porter? In our bedroom while you text her? In our kitchen while you plan your next date? Where exactly would be appropriate for this conversation? Lumi tried to slip away, but Amanda grabbed her arm. Don't you dare leave me to deal with this alone, Amanda hissed. This is your mess, too. I didn't know this would happen, Lumi protested. You didn't know what would happen? That your husband might fight back? That actions might have consequences? The group chat revelations were spreading through the crowd now, and the social dynamics of the evening were shifting rapidly. People who had been friends an hour ago were now eyeing each other with suspicion and anger. Drew, Rory appeared at my elbow, his eyes wide with amazement. What the hell did you do? Me? I'm just standing here watching the party. The entire company email system is melting down. People are getting messages going back months. HR is going crazy. I glanced around the room and saw several executives huddled together, their faces grim. The head of HR, Lumi's boss, was striding across the ballroom with murder in his eyes. Lumi Varen, he called out, his voice carrying over the crowd. My office. Monday morning. First thing. Lumi turned toward him, her face desperate. Mr. Harrison, I can explain. Explain what? Explain why you've been sharing confidential employee information in group chats. Explain why you've been mocking clients and coworkers. Explain why the entire company is now reading your professional opinions about their personal lives. The crowd went quiet again, sensing that this was the main event. The head of HR publicly confronting the head of HR was unprecedented. It was private communication, Lumi said weakly. Private? You used company phones, company email accounts, and discussed company business. Nothing about this was private. Harrison looked around the crowd, his expression grim. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. The company will be conducting a full investigation into this matter. He turned back to Lumi. You're suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You can't do this, Lumi protested. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Harrison said coldly. I suggest you exercise it. Security guards were already moving through the crowd, their presence adding an official weight to the proceedings. This wasn't just social drama anymore. It was corporate discipline being administered in real time. Drew, Lumi turned to me, her voice desperate. Stop this. Please, you've made your point. Have I? Because I'm just getting started. I looked around at the crowd of faces, executives, managers, administrative staff, spouses, all of them watching, all of them waiting to see what would happen next. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom, I'd like to propose a toast. Someone handed me a champagne flute. I couldn't see who. The crowd had become a sea of faces, all focused on me with the intensity of spectators at a gladiator match. The crystal felt cold in my hand, solid and real in a way that everything else suddenly didn't. Drew, don't, Lumi whispered, but her voice was lost in the expectant silence. I raised the glass, and the gesture rippled through the crowd. Other hands lifted champagne flutes, wine glasses, cocktails, whatever they were holding. The corporate conditioning was too strong to resist. When someone proposes a toast at a company party, you participate. To honesty, I began, my voice carrying easily across the ballroom, to authentic communication, to the courage to say what we really think. A few nervous laughs scattered through the crowd. They thought this might be salvageable, that I might pull back from the brink and let everyone return to their comfortable pretenses. They were wrong. My wife Lumi has always been a champion of honest communication, I continued. In fact, she's been sharing her honest opinions about all of you for months. The laughter died. For instance, I pulled out my phone with my free hand. She thinks our CEO is a pompous windbag who couldn't manage a lemonade stand. A collective intake of breath. CEO Richard Morrison was standing near the front of the crowd, his face darkening with each word. She believes our head of sales, that's you, Janet, is sleeping her way to the top with the grace of a drunken elephant. Janet Morrison's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. And our biggest client, Henderson Industries? Lumi thinks they're mouth-breathing morons who wouldn't recognize good work if it bit them on their collective rear end. I could see Henderson's representatives in the crowd. They'd been invited as honored guests. Their faces were stone. Drew, stop this right now, Harrison barked, but I was just getting warmed up. Oh, but we're just getting to the good part. The personal observations, the character studies. I scrolled through my phone, taking my time. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Amanda Fletcher, for example. Lumi thinks you're a desperate social climber with the personality of wet cardboard and the fashion sense of a suburban soccer mom. Amanda made a sound like a wounded animal. Rachel Winters. Pretty enough to get by, but dumb enough to make Lumi look brilliant by comparison. Rachel's face crumpled. Sophie Chen. Useful for now, but ultimately disposable, like a designer purse from last season. Sophie was backing toward the exit, her face flushed with humiliation. But wait, I said, holding up a finger. We haven't gotten to the really interesting stuff yet. The romantic commentary? Porter was trying to edge away, but Helen had him by the arm in a grip that looked painful. According to these messages, Porter here is everything Drew isn't, ambitious, exciting, and actually good in... Enough! Lumi lunged for my phone, her composure finally shattering completely. I stepped aside smoothly, and she stumbled past me, her heel catching on the marble floor. This time she did fall, landing hard on her hands and knees, her designer dress spreading around her like a deflated parachute. The crowd gasped, but no one moved to help her. They were too shocked, too transfixed by the spectacle. "Careful there," I said mildly. "These floors can be slippery." Lumi struggled to her feet, her face flushed with rage and embarrassment. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her dress wrinkled and torn at the knee. "You bastard," she snarled. "You pathetic, vindictive—" Now, I interrupted. "Remember what you always told me about maintaining professional composure? About how successful people don't lose control in public?" She launched herself at me again, and this time I didn't move. I let her grab for my phone, let her claw at my hands, let her make a complete spectacle of herself in front of everyone who mattered in her professional world. "Give me that phone," she shrieked. "Why? Afraid of what else people might learn about you?" Security was moving toward us, but I held up my free hand to stop them. "It's okay," I called out. "Just a minor technical malfunction. Nothing that can't be handled." I looked down at Lumi, who was still grabbing at my phone like a desperate child. "You know what's funny? You were right about one thing. This really isn't a place for children." I gently but firmly pushed her away, and she staggered backward into Porter, who caught her reflexively. "Don't touch her," Helen snapped, yanking her husband away from Lumi. Lumi stood alone in the center of the circle, isolated and exposed. Her allies had abandoned her, her reputation was in ruins, and her career was over. But I wasn't finished yet. "Oh, I almost forgot," I said, raising my voice again. "There's one more thing you all should know." I held up my phone, and the screen showed a video chat interface. A small red light indicated that we were live. "Say hello to the internet, everyone. We're currently streaming live to about, 1,500 viewers and climbing." The silence was deafening. That's right, folks. Everything that's happened here tonight, every revelation, every confrontation, every moment of authentic communication, has been broadcast live to the World Wide Web. Lumi's face went white. "You didn't. Social media is amazing, isn't it? With the right hashtags and a compelling story, you can reach thousands of people in minutes. And everyone loves a good corporate scandal." I could see people in the crowd frantically checking their own phones, probably searching for the stream. Some were already finding it, their faces growing pale as they realized the scope of the exposure. The viewers seemed to be enjoying the show, I continued, glancing at my phone. Lots of comments coming in. Team Drew. "Get him, girl. This is better than reality TV. Really engaging content." "Turn it off," Harrison demanded. "Turn it off right now." "I'm afraid I can't do that. Technical difficulties, you understand. Once something goes live on the internet, it tends to stay there forever." The crowd was starting to panic now. Corporate executives were realizing that their private drama was being broadcast to the world, that their professional reputations were being destroyed in real time by thousands of anonymous viewers. "Besides," I added, "wouldn't turning it off now be a form of censorship? Aren't we all committed to transparency and authentic communication?" Lumi was backing toward the exit now, her face a mask of horror. "This will ruin everything," she whispered. "Will it? I thought you believed in taking responsibility for your actions, in facing the consequences of your choices." She turned and ran, pushing through the crowd toward the ballroom doors. Porter started to follow her, but Helen grabbed his arm. "You're not going anywhere," she said firmly. "We're going home, right now, and we're going to have a very long conversation about your future." She dragged him toward the exit, her voice carrying back over the crowd. "And don't think this is over, Porter James Keller. This is just the beginning." Amanda, Rachel, and Sophie had already disappeared, fleeing the scene of their social destruction. The executives were huddled together, probably discussing damage control and legal options, but the damage was done. The stream was live, the messages were public, and the corporate ecosystem of Meridian Tech would never be the same. I raised my champagne glass one more time. "To authentic communication," I said to the remaining crowd, "and to the power of technology to bring truth to light." I drained the glass and set it on a nearby table. "Thank you all for a lovely evening. I think it's time for this child to go home." I walked toward the exit, leaving behind the wreckage of my wife's career, my marriage, and the comfortable lies that had sustained us all for so long. Behind me, the crowd erupted into chaos. The parking garage beneath the Fairmont Dallas was a concrete tomb, all shadows and echoing footsteps. I found my Honda Civic on level 3, wedged between a BMW and a Mercedes like a middle-class sandwich. The contrast felt appropriate somehow. My phone was buzzing constantly now, calls, texts, notifications from the live stream. I ignored them all and sat in my car for a moment, letting the magnitude of what I'd just done sink in. 8 years of marriage destroyed in one evening. Lumi's career obliterated. My own job probably gone by Monday morning. But for the first time in months, I felt genuinely alive. The elevator dinged, and I looked up to see Lumi emerging into the garage. She'd found her car keys somewhere in the chaos, and her designer heels clicked frantically on the concrete as she hurried toward her Audi. I started my engine and followed her out of the garage, maintaining a careful distance. Not stalking, just ensuring she made it home safely. After all, I was still her husband. For now. The drive to our house in Preston Hollow took 20 minutes, long enough for me to start planning my next moves, because this wasn't over. Tonight had been the opening salvo, but the war was just beginning. Our house was a monument to Lumi's ambitions. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a gourmet kitchen we never used, and a mortgage that required both our incomes to sustain. I'd never liked it, but Lumi insisted we needed to live up to our potential. I pulled into the driveway behind her Audi and watched her struggle with the front door lock. Her hands were shaking, whether from anger or shock, I couldn't tell. "Lumi," I called out as I approached the door. She spun around, her eyes wild. "Stay away from me. It's my house, too." Not for long. She finally got the door open and stormed inside, leaving it open behind her. I followed her into the living room, where she was pacing like a caged animal. Her perfect composure was completely gone now, replaced by raw panic and rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she demanded. "I have a pretty good idea, yes. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. Everything I've worked for." "Everything you've worked for was built on lies and manipulation," I interrupted. "Maybe it's time to try a different approach." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A different approach? Like what, Drew? Like being a mediocre project manager for the rest of my life? Like settling for less than I deserve? Like being honest? Like treating people with respect? Like not mocking your husband in group chats?" "Oh, please. You think you're some kind of victim here? You think you didn't deserve every word I said about you?" I sat down on the couch, suddenly tired. "Maybe I did. But that's not really the point anymore, is it?" She stopped pacing and stared at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this isn't about our marriage anymore, Lumi. This is about consequences. This is about what happens when you treat people like they're disposable." My phone buzzed with a text message, then another, and another. "You might want to check your email," I said. She fumbled for her phone, her hands still shaking. When she looked at the screen, her face went white. "What is this?" "Looks like your suspension has been upgraded to termination, effective immediately." The email from Harrison was brief and brutal. "Due to the events of this evening and the subsequent investigation, your employment with Meridian Tech is hereby terminated. Your access to company systems has been revoked, and security will collect your personal items from your office on Monday." "They can't do this," she whispered. "Actually, they can. Violation of company policy, breach of confidentiality, conduct unbecoming an employee. Take your pick." She sank into the chair across from me, her face buried in her hands. "This is all your fault." "Is it? Because I seem to remember you being the one who wrote those messages. I just made sure people could read them." "You violated my privacy. You hacked my phone." "I used the cloud sync access you asked me to set up 6 months ago. Remember? When you were having trouble with your email?" She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Fear. "What do you want, Drew? Money? The house? What's it going to take to make this stop?" "Stop? Oh, Lumi, this isn't stopping. This is just getting started." I pulled out my laptop and opened it on the coffee table. The live stream was still running, though the viewer count had dropped to a few hundred. The comments section was still active, though. People were sharing the video, creating clips, turning it into memes. "Look at this," I said, turning the screen toward her. "You're famous. Corporate wife meltdown is trending on Twitter. Someone made a gif of you falling down. It's got 50,000 shares already." She stared at the screen in horror. "Make it stop." "I can't. That's the beautiful thing about the internet. Once something goes viral, it takes on a life of its own." My phone rang. The caller ID showed Porter's name. "Should I answer it?" I asked. "Don't you dare." I answered it anyway, putting it on speaker. "Drew, you son of a—" Porter's voice was slurred with alcohol and rage. "Porter, how are you holding up? Rough night?" "You destroyed my marriage, you pathetic piece of—" "I destroyed your marriage? That's interesting. I thought you destroyed it when you started planning to leave your wife for my wife." Helen threw me out. She changed the locks. She's talking about taking the kids. That does sound rough. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started texting other women. I'm going to ruin you, Drew. I'm going to make you pay for this. How? You're unemployed, homeless, and probably facing a messy divorce. What exactly are you going to do to me? The line went quiet for a moment. I know people, Porter said finally. Important people. They'll make sure you never work in this town again. Important people like who? Your wife's PTA friends? Because I don't think they're very happy with you right now. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. This isn't over, he said. You're right about that. It's not over. But it's not going the way you think it is. I hung up and looked at Lumi, who was staring at me like I was a stranger. You're enjoying this, she said. You know what? I am. For the first time in years, I'm actually enjoying myself. She stood up abruptly. I'm leaving. Where are you going? Away from you, away from this mess. I'm going to stay with Amanda until I can figure out what to do next. Good luck with that, but you might want to call first. Amanda's probably not very happy with you right now either. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. This won't bring you happiness, Drew. Revenge never does. Maybe not, but it's more satisfying than I expected. She slammed the door behind her, and I was alone in the house for the first time in years. The silence was profound, almost peaceful. I opened my laptop again and started typing. If Lumi thought tonight was bad, she was in for a surprise, because I'd spent months preparing for this moment, and I had plans she couldn't even imagine. The first step was securing the house. I changed the security code, updated the locks, and transferred all the utilities into my name alone. Legal, since my name was on all the accounts. The second step was financial. I opened our banking app and transferred our joint savings into a personal account I'd opened weeks ago. Also legal, since it was community property and I had every right to protect our assets during a marital crisis. The third step was documentation. I uploaded every message, every email, every piece of evidence to a secure cloud server with multiple backups. Insurance, in case Lumi tried to claim I'd fabricated anything. The fourth step was the most important. I started making phone calls. Rory, it's Drew. I need a favor. By dawn, I had everything in place. Lumi thought her night of humiliation was the end of her troubles. She was wrong. It was just the beginning. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that made Dallas almost beautiful. I sat on my back patio with coffee and my laptop, watching the sunrise while I monitored the digital wildfire I'd started. The corporate party video had exploded overnight. Someone had edited it down to the most devastating moments. Lumi's fall, Porter's confrontation with his wife, my toast, and it was spreading across every social media platform. The hashtag #LetHimGoHome was trending nationally. My phone rang. Amanda Fletcher's name appeared on the screen. Drew, you have to help me, she said without preamble. Her voice was strained, desperate. Good morning, Amanda. How are you holding up? This is a disaster. My boss saw the video. My clients are asking questions. My reputation is... Ruined? I suggested helpfully. This isn't funny, Drew. People are taking those group chat messages out of context. Are they? Because they seem pretty clear to me. Drew's holding Lumi back. He's a burden. She deserves better. Which part was taken out of context? Silence on the other end of the line. I need you to post a retraction, she said finally. Explain that those messages were private venting, not serious opinions. But they were serious opinions, weren't they, Amanda? That's what makes this so authentic. Drew, please. I have a career to think about. So did I, until my wife and her friends decided I was expendable. I hung up and blocked her number. Amanda was the least of my concerns now. My laptop chimed with a new email. The subject line made me smile. Freelance opportunity, urgent. It was from Henderson Industries, the client Lumi had called mouth-breathing morons, in her group chat. They wanted to hire me as an independent contractor to redesign their entire digital infrastructure. The pay was double my Meridian Tech salary. Apparently they'd been impressed by my innovative approach to corporate transparency. I was composing my acceptance email when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Lumi standing on the porch with 2 suitcases and a defeated expression. I need to get some things, she said when I opened the door. Of course, it's still your house too, for now. She wheeled her suitcases inside and looked around like she was seeing the place for the first time. Amanda won't let me stay with her anymore, she said quietly. Trouble in paradise? She says I'm toxic. That being associated with me could damage her business? Imagine that. Actions having consequences. Lumi sank onto the couch, her perfect posture finally crumbling. I lost everything, Drew. My job, my friends, my reputation, everything I worked for is gone. Not everything, I said. You still have your health, your education, your natural charm, and winning personality. She looked up at me with something that might have been hope. Are you saying we can work this out? Fix our marriage? Oh no, we're getting divorced. I just wanted to point out that you're not completely without resources. The hope died in her eyes. You really hate me, don't you? Hate is too strong a word. I'm just disappointed. I thought I married someone with integrity. I never meant for things to go this far with Porter. Which part? The emotional affair? The planning to leave me? The public humiliation? I'm curious where you would have drawn the line. She didn't answer. Pack what you need, I said. But don't get too comfortable. This house is going on the market next week. You can't sell the house. I have rights. Actually, I can. Community property laws work both ways, Lumi. And since you're unemployed now, you can't qualify for the mortgage on your own. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What happened to you, Drew? You used to be so nice. Nice is what got me into this mess. Turns out I'm much better at being strategic. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. P. Porter. I showed the message to Lumi. He's been trying to reach me too, she said. Helen kicked him out. He's staying at some motel. How romantic. Maybe you two can commiserate about your mutual downfall. This isn't a game, Drew. You're right. Games have rules. This is war. Another text from Porter. Meet me at Cafe Brazil on Henderson. 1 hour. Come alone. I stood up and grabbed my keys. Where are you going? Lumi asked. To have coffee with your boyfriend. Don't wait up. Cafe Brazil was a local institution, the kind of place where hipsters and corporate refugees went to feel authentic. I found Porter in a corner booth, looking like he'd slept in his clothes, which given his current living situation, he probably had. Drew. He stood up as I approached, his politician smile nowhere to be found. Porter, you look terrible. He sat back down heavily. Thanks for coming. I was curious. What could you possibly have to say to me? We need to call a truce. This has gone far enough. I ordered coffee from the waitress and studied Porter's face. He'd aged 5 years in 2 days. A truce? That's interesting. What are you offering? I'll disappear. Leave Dallas, start over somewhere else. You'll never see me again. And in return? You stop the campaign. No more videos, no more leaks, no more public humiliation. Campaign? I'm not running for office, Porter. I'm just living my life. Don't play dumb. I know you're planning something else. This was just the beginning. He was right, of course, but I wasn't about to admit it. What makes you think I'm planning anything? Because I know you, Drew. You're smarter than people think, and you're angry. Angry people don't stop at one victory. The coffee arrived, giving me time to think. Porter was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. Let's say you're right, I said finally. Let's say I am planning something else. Why should I accept your offer? Because if you don't, I'll fight back, and I still have resources you don't. Such as? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. I know things about you, Drew, things that could be embarrassing if they became public. I laughed. Like what? My mediocre performance reviews, my student loan debt, my subscription to Netflix? Like your little side business, the consulting work you've been doing on company time. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. What are you talking about? Henderson Industries, Apex Solutions, Digital Dynamics. You've been freelancing for our competitors for months, using Meridian Tech resources and insider information. He was fishing, but he'd caught something. I had been doing some freelance work, though nothing unethical or illegal. But in the right light, with the right spin, it could look bad. That's quite an accusation, I said carefully. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. I have documentation. Show me. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through some files. Email records, timestamps, financial transactions. All very interesting reading. I studied the screen, my mind racing. The evidence was circumstantial but damaging. Porter had done his homework. So what's your proposal? I asked. You back off, and this stays between us. You keep pushing, and I release everything to the press. Vengeful husband's illegal business exposed. Has a nice ring to it. I finished my coffee and set the cup down carefully. That's a compelling offer, Porter. Really compelling. So we have a deal? Absolutely not. His face fell. Drew, you don't understand. No, you don't understand. You think you're playing chess, but you're actually playing checkers, and you just showed me all your pieces. I pulled out my own phone and opened the voice recording app. The red dot indicated it had been running for the entire conversation. Attempted blackmail. Conspiracy to damage someone's reputation. Very interesting stuff. Porter went white. You can't what? Record a conversation in a public place? Actually, I can. Texas is a one-party consent state. I stood up and dropped a $10 bill on the table. Thanks for the chat, Porter. This has been very educational. Drew, wait. Oh, and Porter? You're right about one thing. This was just the beginning. I walked out of the cafe, leaving him sitting alone in the corner booth, probably contemplating the ruins of his life. My phone was already buzzing with new messages, new opportunities, new possibilities for creative revenge. The war was just getting started. Monday morning brought rain and reckoning in equal measure. I sat in my car outside Porter's motel, watching him load his pathetic belongings into a rental truck. The Motel 6 on Northwest Highway wasn't exactly the lifestyle he was accustomed to, but it was all he could afford now. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Lumi and 43 text messages. I'd read the first few, desperate pleas for mercy, threats of legal action, promises of revenge, but they all said the same thing. She was terrified of what I might do next. She was right to be terrified. Porter finished loading his truck and walked toward the motel office, probably checking out. He looked broken, defeated, nothing like the confident sales executive who'd been dancing with my wife 3 days ago. But I wasn't finished with him yet. I followed his truck as it wound through Dallas traffic, staying several cars back. He was heading east toward the suburbs, toward the life he'd thrown away for a few months of excitement with another man's wife. His destination turned out to be Highland Park Elementary School. Of course, his kids. I parked across the street and watched as Porter sat in his truck, staring at the school building. The morning bell had already rung, so the playground was empty, but I could see small faces pressed against classroom windows. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I see you. Porter was looking directly at me through his windshield. Another text. This has to stop. I got out of my car and walked across the street. Porter rolled down his window as I approached. Following me now? He asked. Just making sure you actually leave town like you promised. I'm picking up my kids. Helen agreed to let me say goodbye. How generous of her. Porter's face was haggard, his eyes as red. You won, Drew. Isn't that enough? Won? This isn't about winning, Porter. This is about justice. Justice? You destroyed my marriage, my career, my entire life. What more do you want? I want you to understand something. I want you to really, truly comprehend what you did. A woman emerged from the school building, Helen Keller, looking tired but determined. She walked toward Porter's truck with 2 children in tow, a boy and a girl who couldn't have been older than 8 and 10. Daddy! The little girl ran toward the truck, but Helen caught her arm. Remember what we talked about, Helen said firmly. 5 minutes. Porter got out of the truck and knelt down to hug his children. The boy hung back, confused and hurt, but the girl threw her arms around her father's neck. Are you coming home soon? She asked. Porter looked over her head at me, his eyes filled with pain. I don't know, sweetheart. Daddy made some mistakes. Can't you just say sorry? Sometimes sorry isn't enough. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite guilt, but recognition. These children were innocent casualties in a war they didn't understand. But then I remembered the group chat messages, the cruel laughter, the casual dismissal of my worth as a human being. The flicker died. Helen was watching me too, her expression unreadable. After a few minutes, she gently pulled the children away from their father. Time to go, she said. Daddy, no, the little girl cried. I'll call you, Porter promised. I'll call you every day. Helen herded the children back toward the school, leaving Porter standing alone beside his truck. Oh, he turned to face me, his composure finally cracking. Are you happy now? He demanded. You've destroyed a family. You've hurt innocent children. Was your revenge worth that? You destroyed your family, Porter. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Those kids will grow up thinking their father is a monster. Their father is a monster. He just hit it better than most. Porter lunged at me then, his fist connecting with my jaw in a wild, desperate swing. I staggered backward, tasting copper, but I didn't fight back. Feel better? I asked, wiping my mouth. He swung again, but this time I was ready. I caught his wrist and twisted, sending him to his knees on the wet asphalt. Violence, Porter? Really? Is that your solution to everything? Let me go, he gasped. In a minute. First, I want you to listen to something. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from our cafe meeting. His voice filled the air, clear and incriminating. I know things about you, Drew. Things that could be embarrassing if they became public. Attempted blackmail, I said conversationally. That's a felony in Texas. 3 to 10 years in prison? Porter's face went white. You can't what? Report a crime? Turn over evidence to the authorities? I released his wrist and stepped back. But I'm not going to do that. You know why? He shook his head. Because prison would be too easy. You'd have a roof over your head, 3 meals a day, medical care. You'd be a victim, and people might feel sorry for you. I knelt down beside him, my voice dropping to a whisper. This way, you get to live with your choices. Every day, for the rest of your life, you'll remember that you had everything. A beautiful wife, successful career, loving children, and you threw it all away for a few months of excitement. Porter was crying now, tears mixing with the rain on his face. You'll find another job eventually, I continued. Probably in another city, making half what you used to make. You'll live in a small apartment, see your kids every other weekend if you're lucky, and every night, when you're lying alone in your empty bed, you'll remember that this is the life you chose. I stood up and looked down at him, kneeling in the parking lot like a broken man. That's justice, Porter, not revenge. Justice. I walked back to my car, leaving him there in the rain. My phone was ringing as I drove away. Lumi's name on the screen. Drew, we need to talk, she said when I answered. Do we? I'm at the house, with my lawyer. How nice. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The lawyer turned out to be Margaret Chen, Sophie's mother, ironically enough. She was a formidable woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention. Mr. Halden, she said as I entered my own living room, I'm Margaret Chen, representing your wife in divorce proceedings. Pleasure to meet you. Though I have to say, it's interesting that you're willing to represent someone who called your daughter useful, but ultimately disposable. Margaret's expression didn't change, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. My personal feelings don't affect my professional obligations, she said. Of course not. What can I do for you? Lumi was sitting on the couch, looking smaller somehow, diminished. Drew, I want to settle this quietly. No more public scenes, no more humiliation. We can divide everything fairly and move on with our lives. That sounds reasonable, I said. What are you offering? Margaret opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick document. We're prepared to offer you 60% of all marital assets, including the house. Mrs. Halden will waive any claim to alimony and cover all legal expenses. I pretended to consider this. 60%? That's generous. In return, Margaret continued, you agree to stop all harassment, remove any defamatory content from the internet, and sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from discussing the marriage publicly. Ah, there's the catch. It's not a catch, Mr. Halden. It's a reasonable request for privacy. I sat down across from them and smiled. I'm afraid I can't accept those terms. Lumi leaned forward. Drew, please. I'm trying to be fair here. Fair? You think offering me 60% of assets I already have access to is fair? You think asking me to hide your crimes is reasonable? Crimes? Margaret interjected. What crimes? I pulled out my laptop and opened a new folder. Misuse of company resources. Breach of confidentiality. Harassment of employees. Should I continue? Those are civil matters at best, Margaret said dismissively. Are they? What about conspiracy to commit fraud? Both women went very still. I'm sorry, what? Margaret asked. The Henderson Industries account. Lumi had access to confidential bidding information, which she shared with Porter, who passed it along to his contacts at competing firms. This was a bluff, but a calculated one. I'd seen enough suspicious patterns in the email records to make an educated guess. Lumi's face confirmed I was right. That's not, she stammered. Not what? Not illegal. Industrial espionage carries serious penalties, Lumi, federal penalties. Margaret was studying her client's face, probably recognizing the same tells I was seeing. Do you have evidence of this alleged conspiracy? She asked. I have email records, phone logs, financial transactions, enough to interest the FBI, I think. This was mostly true. I had email records that showed suspicious patterns, though nothing definitively proving fraud, but Lumi didn't know that. What do you want? Lumi whispered. I want you to understand that this isn't a negotiation. You don't get to set terms anymore. I closed the laptop and stood up. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign an uncontested divorce agreement giving me 75% of all assets. You're going to waive all claims to alimony, spousal support, and future earnings. And you're going to publicly apologize for your behavior. That's extortion, Margaret said. Is it? I'm offering to keep criminal evidence private in exchange for a fair divorce settlement. Seems reasonable to me. And if we refuse? Lumi asked. Then I turn everything over to the authorities and let them sort it out. Your choice. Margaret was whispering urgently in Lumi's ear, but I could see the fight going out of my wife. She was beaten, and she knew it. I need time to think, Lumi said finally. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I make some phone calls. They left without another word, Margaret's briefcase snapping shut like the sound of a closing coffin. I poured myself a whiskey and sat on my back patio, watching the rain fall on the garden Lumi had never bothered to tend. Tomorrow, one way or another, this would be over. My phone buzzed with a text from Rory. Saw the news about Henderson Industries hiring you. Congratulations, man. You deserve it. I did deserve it. After years of being treated like furniture, like background noise in my own life, I finally felt like I mattered. The rain was stopping, and through the clouds, I could see the first hint of sunshine. It was going to be a beautiful day. The coffee shop in downtown Austin was exactly the kind of place I'd learned to love. Authentic, unpretentious, filled with people who valued substance over style. I sat at my usual corner table, laptop open, working on the Henderson Industries project that had become my ticket to a new life. Drew Halden? I looked up to see a young woman with a press badge and a nervous smile. I'm Jessica Martinez from the Austin Business Journal. We spoke on the phone? Right, the interview. Please sit. She settled into the chair across from me, pulling out a digital recorder. I hope you don't mind, but I have to ask about the video. The one that went viral last year? I'd been expecting this question for months. The corporate party video had become something of a legend in business circles, a cautionary tale about workplace culture and personal accountability. What would you like to know? Do you regret it? The public confrontation, I mean? I considered the question while she set up her recorder. Did I regret it? Lumi had signed the divorce papers the morning after our final meeting, taking her 25% and disappearing from Dallas. Porter had moved to Phoenix and was working as a used car salesman. Amanda's marketing firm had lost 3 major clients and downsized significantly. No, I said finally. I don't regret it. Even though it destroyed several people's careers? They destroyed their own careers. I just made sure people knew about it. Jessica nodded, making notes. Your consulting business has been incredibly successful since then. Do you think the notoriety helped? Partly. But mostly it's because people appreciate honesty. After years of corporate doublespeak and fake relationships, authenticity is refreshing. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen Keller. Kids want to thank you for the college fund contributions. You're a good man, Drew. I'd been anonymously supporting Porter's children for months, making sure they had opportunities their father's mistakes couldn't take away. It wasn't guilt. It was just the right thing to do. One more question, Jessica said. If you could go back, would you handle things differently? I thought about Lumi, probably working some entry-level job under her maiden name, her MBA, and years of experience worthless after the scandal. I thought about Porter, calling his children from a studio apartment, trying to explain why Daddy couldn't come home. I might have been more surgical, I said. More precise. But the outcome would have been the same. No regrets about the marriage ending? The marriage ended the night my wife told a room full of people that I didn't belong there. Everything after that was just paperwork. Jessica finished her questions and packed up her equipment. After she left, I sat alone with my coffee, watching Austin's tech workers and entrepreneurs chase their dreams with the same intensity Lumi had once brought to her corporate climbing. My phone rang. Unknown number. Drew? It's Lumi. I hadn't heard her voice in 6 months. She sounded different, smaller, uncertain. Lumi, how are you? I'm okay. Living in San Antonio now, working for a small nonprofit. That's good. Honest work. Silence stretched between us, filled with everything we'd never said and never would. I wanted to apologize, she said finally. For everything. For the things I said, the way I treated you. You didn't deserve that. No, I didn't. I know it's too late, but I needed you to know that I understand now. What I lost. What I threw away. Do you? I had a good man who loved me, and I convinced myself he wasn't enough. I was so focused on what I thought I deserved that I forgot to appreciate what I had. I watched the Austin traffic flow past the coffee shop window, all those people heading somewhere important, chasing something better. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. I think I already did. I just found it too late. She hung up without saying goodbye. I finished my coffee and packed up my laptop. The Henderson Industries presentation was due tomorrow, and I had work to do. Real work, meaningful work, the kind that built things instead of tearing them down. Outside, the Texas sun was shining, and the future stretched ahead like an open road. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged.